Good morning, everyone. I would like to call this meeting to order this morning. We have Supervisor Steve Moss attending by telephone. And
I'm here.
Good morning, Supervisor Moss. I'd like to start out this morning asking our Reverend Dennis Cronkite from College Park Baptist Church to lead us in the invocation if he's here. I don't see him this morning, so apparently he's running late. So if you would join me, I'll do my best to lead us in the invocation. Okay, if you'll bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we come before you today to give you honor and praise. We thank you for our great country, and we ask your divine wisdom for all of our leaders here today. May we be given the wisdom and the courage in the decisions we make. We ask that you guide and direct our meeting that is full of wisdom, productivity, and respect for one another. We thank you for the accomplishments of reaching our goals today, and we pray these things in your mighty name. Amen. I'm sorry. Supervisor Watson, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
You follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll start out this morning. I'll entertain a motion to call for an executive session to be held September the 8th, 2015. Call for an executive session to be held October the 4th, October the 5th at 9:30 a.m. or at the conclusion of the regular meeting, whichever is later, for discussion and consultation with legal counsel in accordance with ARS 38-431.03A3 and 4 to discuss items noticed in the agenda with an asterisk.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Going on to the official business to come before the board. We have discussion of pending or contemplated litigation claims and demands. Attorney Ekstrom, do you have any items that need to go into executive session?
I do not, Madam Chairman.
All right, thank you. Under committee and/or legislative reports, do any of the supervisors have any reports? Supervisor Johnson?
Nothing, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Watson?
Nothing to report this morning.
Supervisor Angus?
Nothing this morning, thank you.
And Supervisor Moss?
Nothing.
Okay, county administrators report.
Madam Chairman, Mojave County Public Works Department has been administering a capital pavement preservation plan since 2013. Their capital pavement preservation plan program identifies and implements cost-effective ways to rehabilitate distressed pavement. To date, Public Works has successfully delivered over 23 miles of pavement rehabilitation projects in Mojave County. And for my report, I'd like to ask our Public Works Director, Steve Letowski, to come up and tell us about Public Works' most recent capital preservation program plan on Pierce Ferry Road.
Thank you. Director Lekowski, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, County Administrator Hendricks, Madam Chair, members of the board. Public Works at the end of last fiscal year completed a 7-mile pavement preservation project for a section of Pierce Ferry Road from US 93 through the town of Dolan to approximately the Mount Tipton School. And we approached this as part of our capital pavement preservation program, and as such, we undertook a very innovative procurement process. We call it a smart RFP process, whereby we reach out to the contracting community for their proposals based on published engineering standards for our quality-based consideration. And one of the pavement treatments that came to our attention that was really a best practice treatment as well as a cost-effective treatment was what was commonly termed a rubberized chip seal, and the specific technical term is polymer modified asphalt rubber chip seal. What it does is it provides a stress-absorbing membrane to the weatherproofing chip seal that undoubtedly, through proven applications nationwide, should enhance and actually extend the service life of a typical chip seal. But there was one ancillary benefit with regard to this chip seal, and the particular asphalt binder that was used for this application consisted of 16% crumb rubber. And all of that crumb rubber was sourced to recycled tires sourced right here in Mojave County. In fact, the 7.2 miles that were completed by the county required 7,500 recycled tires. So we're pretty proud of that, and as a result, Cactus Asphalt was the contractor. They were so kind in providing us with a certificate that we'll be proud to display in our Public Works building. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lukowski, and I've driven that road many times since it's been installed, and it's very nice. I've received a lot of compliments from the folks that live out there and drive it daily. So besides the fact that we used recycled tires, we in District 4 really appreciate your efforts, so thank you very much. Alrighty, moving on to the call to the public. I have no one that assigned. I missed number 4. There are no Board of Supervisor meetings. I have it. I redid the agenda with my notes, and apparently my computer did some corrections that I wasn't aware of. Okay, item number 4, approval of the July 20th, 2015 Board of Supervisor meeting minutes and the August 6th, 2015 Board of Supervisor special meeting minutes.
So moved.
Have a motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Going with the original agenda, we'll go on to the call to the public, and I do not have anyone that has signed up to speak. As a courtesy, I'll offer it one last time if there's anyone that would like to speak on a non-agendized item. All right, seeing none, I will close the call to the public. Going on to proclamations. We have a proclamation proclaiming the month of October 2015 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Supervisor Angus will read that proclamation.
Okay, it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Whereas 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will be a victim of domestic violence in their lifetime, and whereas the problems of domestic violence are not confined in any groups of people, but across all economic, racial, and social barriers, and whereas the crime of domestic violence violates an individual's privacy, dignity, security, and humanity, and whereas the impact of domestic violence is widespread, affecting the moral fabric of society as a whole. Now, therefore, we, the Mojave County Board of Supervisors, do hereby proclaim October 2015 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and along with the Mojave County Attorney Victim Witness Program, urge all citizens to actively participate in the scheduled activities and programs in the state of Arizona to work towards the elimination of violence in the home.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the proclamation?
I did. Do we have to?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, all the Board of Supervisors will be signing this proclamation later. Okay, going on to the Board of Supervisors consent agenda. We have items 5 through 34 listed and will be considered as a group and acted upon by one motion with no separate discussion on these items unless a board member requests. So do we have any supervisors that would like an item and removed from the consent agenda, starting with Supervisor Angus?
Item 24.
Okay, Supervisor Moss.
16 and 17.
16 and 17. Supervisor Watson.
None.
And Supervisor Johnson?
None.
And I have none. I'll entertain a motion to approve items 5 through 34 minus items 16, 17, and 24.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. All right, those items pass by majority. We'll discuss item number 16.
Madam Chair, my question on both 16 and 17 is it seems like a lot of money, and I was wondering if there's any way of delaying that for a year or two. And I wanted to see if County Administrator Hendricks or Steve Latosky had any comments on the subject as to why it's necessary to purchase it now.
All right, Director Lukowski, do you have any information that you can share with us on items 16 and 17?
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. Item 16 concerns the Public Works proposal to purchase 5 motor graders. The purchase will be through the Highway User Revenue Fund, sourced through Public Works. And just for a brief overview for the board, Public Works engaged in an aggressive modernization of our Caterpillar 140H motor grader fleet beginning in fiscal year 10 to reflect our commitment to 21st century operations and continued priority investment in field operations. The adopted FY16 budget continues the department's motor grader fleet modernization and expands the fleet to 20 motor graders total. Expanding the fleet provides a target outcome of enabling current blade route circuits to reduce service intervals on basis of the 20th motor grader providing support to certain sections requiring intensive blading service, which has limited progress of blade circuits under current operations. The adopted FY16 budget appropriated approximately $1.4 million toward the purchase of 4 new motor graders, replacing 4 existing year 2005 to year 2007 140H models, as well as about $350,000 toward the purchase of a new 20th motor grader for the fleet. As a conclusion of this procurement, the Public Works motor grader fleet will consist of 3 CAT 140H motor graders and 17 modern CAT 140 M series motor graders. This is really the backbone of our unsurfaced road maintenance, encompassing nearly 1,300 road miles, and the Public Works HERF budget is well positioned to take this particular procurement. And item 17 is very much complementary to the motor grader purchase. Here we're aiming to procure a new distributor truck as well as 2 water trucks. Now the water trucks pretty much run in tandem with our motor graders. They obviously support other heavy maintenance operations, but they're a necessary procurement as part of our aging water truck fleet. We replaced 3 water trucks last year, and as part of our maintaining our fleet of 6 water trucks, these other 2 water truck purchases will complement that. We're also aiming to modernize our chip seal fleet. We very cost effectively perform our chip seal operations in-house, and as a result we aim to procure a new distributor truck to facilitate that chip seal operations for cost efficiency. And I should add, item 17 also includes an equipment maintenance vehicle. This was an aging truck. I believe it was about 15 years old, and that's going to enable us to provide equipment services, repairs, etc., even just routine equipment servicing in the field, and it's really positions us well to keep our road maintenance operations moving as the equipment shop comes out to the field to service our equipment through vehicles such as this, as opposed to us having to incur substantial downtime with bringing equipment back to the shop.
Okay, thank you. And it's my understanding that this was adopted by the capital equipment budget for the amounts that are being requested?
That is correct, Madam Chair, in concert with adopting the Highway User Revenue Fund budget.
All right, we'll go back to item 16. Let me read it for the benefit of those out there that don't have an agenda. Item 16 states approve utilizing the City of Tucson Cooperative Contract Number 120377, heavy equipment, parts, accessories, supplies, and related services awarded to Caterpillar Incorporated for the purchase of 5 new 2015 Caterpillar 12M3 all-wheel drive motor graders in the amount of $1,747,745. On behalf of Public Works Department Equipment Fleet Division, funding for this purchase was originally adopted as part of the fiscal year 16 adopted capital equipment budget in the amount of $1,746,940, sourced to 20503-4300 due to procurement savings realized on other capital equipment purchases utilizing the same funds. The current budget can support the additional $805.90. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, if I could, please.
I do have some
Wait, I want to
questions,
discuss.
Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Supervisor Watson, I think you had the floor first.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to approve the award of the contract number 120377 for the heavy equipment as proposed in item 16. These items are essential for the road maintenance in all of Mojave County. It's on a program of replacement. It's a normal function of which we do often. Holding up the decision to make this purchase would have no effect on the general fund because this is the HERF fund. And so that's the reason I'd like to make that motion for the approval. It is essential equipment for the road maintenance department, and without it, they'll fall behind schedule and further disrupt our ability to provide service out on many of our unsurfaced roads.
Thank you, Supervisor Watson. We do have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Well, motion to discuss?
Second, yeah.
We have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. And is there any discussion? Supervisor Angus, I see you're raising your hand.
I think Supervisor
so-
Moss wanted to speak first.
Well, you jumped out there, so I was going to let you have the floor. But if you want to let Supervisor Moss speak
Yes.
first. Supervisor Moss, go ahead.
Thank you. Director Latosky, what's the average hours on our motor graders within the fleet? For example, if we're replacing 4 from last year, if I understood you correctly, how many hours are on those motor graders?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Moss, while I do not have that information in front of me, I do understand that the 4 140H motor graders that we are trading in, they are either models 2005 to 2007. They do have hours that have exceeded the 7,000 hour buyback amount. I would reason to guess and make a very good estimate that these blades probably have about 10,000 hours on them. They incur about 1,000 to 1,200 hours annually.
Okay, thank you. You anticipated my next question. And this 1.7 million is coming from the HERF fund?
Supervisor Moss, that is absolutely correct, yes, and was programmed in the FY16 budget.
How many operators do we have for these 20 motor graders this will take our fleet to?
Supervisor Moss, we have a road maintenance specialist assigned to all of the outside blades that we operate. So we have a dedicated operator per blade. And then in our larger maintenance districts, such as Mojave Valley, Golden Valley, et cetera, we have approximately 2 to 4 blades assigned to those districts. And we are in position with manpower to actually have those blades online and operating if we engage in routine operations. So we do have the manpower assigned to each and every blade. With the exception of probably one blade, we typically keep one blade in reserve as a floater for more heavier maintenance work.
So if I understand your comment correctly, that we have 19 out of 20 blades have an operator?
Supervisor Moss, yes, we target about 19 of our 20 blades that have dedicated operators under our routine maintenance operations.
And is there any, how many additional backup operators do we have in the event that an operator takes PTO or something of that nature?
Supervisor Moss, good question. The road maintenance division is positioned in such a manner that we have cross-training among our road maintenance workers from the specialists on down to the seniors. So there is flexibility for other staff to step in and provide maintenance on the blades should a lead operator take PTO. And that's, again, all premised on our routine operations.
All right. What I would like to get from Director Latosky sometime in the next couple of weeks, and it doesn't have to be a formal report, but I would like an accounting of the blades we've purchased since 2005 and the amount of hours on each of those blades before we put them out of service, whether we traded them in or elsewise. So other than that, I have no other questions on item 16 or 17.
Okay, Supervisor Moss, does that conclude your comments?
It does.
All righty, we have
I
a
have a
motion.
question,
Well, I
Madam
have a
Chair, unless Supervisor Angus has a
Yeah,
question.
I have a question. How much money do we have in our HERF fund now altogether?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Angus, as far as our cash balance in HERF, again, just speaking from memory, I believe we have above $14 million cash on
Is
hand.
that correct? Okay, so this is what, about 10% of that? How much are you planning on spending on actual roads, taking care of roads out of the HERF fund this year?
Supervisor Angus, the procurement and operation of our motor graders really is a backbone of our servicing of unsurfaced roads, so that actually counts towards the expenditures that we incur annually. We have, in our capital fund, we have $500,000 program for the capital pavement preservation program to do more surface treatments that I spoke of before on our county highways and arterials. We also have approximately $450,000 program for chip seal treatments. Overall, our road materials budget is about $1.2 million. That encompasses chip sealing, crack sealing, pothole repair, et cetera. So that's on the operations side, pretty much a summary. We also have a couple of major federally funded capital projects, $2 million federally funded in Golden Shores for intersection reconstruction, $1 million for the Sacramento Wash crossing at Oatman Highway in Topak. And we also have $1 million of traffic safety improvements that we're doing countywide that are federally funded. We're seeing that all roll out this fiscal year 16.
Okay. My point is, I'd like to see more roads being taken care of. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Angus. Supervisor Johnson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. When you do, this is like our vehicle replacement fund we have for our cars and trucks, the same thing. And these vehicles or these graders will be sold at auction?
Supervisor Johnson, we have a guaranteed buyback, and I believe it's like on these particular graders, for round numbers, the purchase price is about $350,000 each. At 7 years, 7,000 hours, we have the option of trading them back to Caterpillar at, I believe, $145,000 per grader. But we actually do better on the open market. We have a very well-constructed procurement initiative where we have the ability to co-sign our heavy construction equipment through a third party, and we found that either by auction or particularly through this co-assignment process that we can actually beat considerably the buyback amounts.
Right, that's one thing I wanted to just point out, that the program we have now has worked very well and actually brought more money back into us. So I have no problem with it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, does anybody else have any other questions for Director Lukowski? Thank you very much. Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. Be calling for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes by unanimous support. Item number 17, approve utilizing Procure Arizona Cooperative Contract Number ADSP 014-063235, medium and heavy-duty cab and chassis awarded to RWC International Phoenix, Arizona for the purchase of 2 new 2016 water trucks, 7400 SBA 6x4 Workstar, 1 new 2016 distributor truck, 7600 SBA 6x4 Workstar, and 1 new 2016 service truck, 4300 SBA 4x2 Workstar, in the amount of $653,592.94 on behalf of the Public Works Department. Equipment Fleet Division. Funding for this purchase was originally approved as part of the fiscal year 16 adopted capital equipment budget in the amount of $522,492, sourced to the 205034300 for the water trucks, and distributor truck, and $178,500 sourced to 205034303 for service truck. So I'll entertain a motion on item number 17.
Madam Chairman, be glad to make a motion for the approval of utilizing the procedure, the Arizona Cooperative Contract, number ADSPO 14-063235, for the purchase of medium and heavy-duty equipment for the road department.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second?
A motion and a second. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed?
Aye.
Okay, item 17 passes unanimously. Going on
Madam
to,
Chairman, I'm concerned that Mr. Moss may have meant to vote no on both those items.
That's incorrect, Attorney Exum. I voted yes on both items.
Thank you.
I just requested as part of item 16, which would be inclusive of item 16, if Mr. Latowski could provide me a itemized list of the blades and the trucks we've had, together with their hours of operation for each since 2005.
okay, I'm
So I
having
did
a little difficulty hearing you, Supervisor Moss, but as long as the clerk of the board, did you get that? All righty. So now we can go on to item number 24. Approve change in the title of the Board of Supervisors Administrative Assistant Secretary Elective to Board of Supervisors Executive Assistant from Class Codes 0002 and 0003 to Board of Supervisors Executive Assistant Class Code 0002 non-exempt and 0006 exempt for the following position numbers: 970034, 128, 201314, 132, 201316, and 201315, with no salary changes from Human Resources. So this item was pulled by
Me.
Supervisor Angus, so I'll let you have the
Thank
floor.
you. I just don't understand it. I just want it to be explained to me since it affects, it's brought by the Board of Supervisor. I want to know who brought it forward and what it really means.
All righty, we have our representative walking to the podium, but while she's walking up, I'm the one that asked for this to be looked at. I believe that our assistants do a lot more than what the positions state right now. They not only oversee the daily operations of the office, they also provide professional, administrative, and analytic support while ensuring the day-to-day operations. They are also the first contact with my constituents, and I'm sure yours too, and they assist with individual needs, complaints, and neighborhood problems. And my personal representative attends community meetings when I'm not available, and she serves on a committee, and I just think that the proposed title reflects more respect for the work that they do, not only internally, but externally when dealing with the public. So that's why I requested this be looked at.
It's just a title change?
It's just a title change.
And we, actually, this is not, they're not under the classification compensation purview, so this is not something that we would have looked at unless requested. So it's really up to the board to decide what titles. It's really just we only assign titles for pay for these positions because they are not considered under our classification.
As I understand it, we can say whatever we want, right? I mean, I
Yeah,
can call
yeah, there are
my
other-
assistant the grand poobah of District 2
Much.
if I wanted to. I don't know if she'd like that, but she might.
Yes,
But- So
we
why does
could-
it have to be in something formal?
Well, another thing that could be done is working titles. Those are available as well. It's really up to the board whether they want to officially change the title or not. But working titles pretty much says everybody's an admin assistant. However, we decided to call them this instead.
Is it, and it's just for the Board of Supervisors?
Just for the Board of Supervisors. Yes, we did look at some of the other counties, and the way that some of them are structured, they did call theirs executive assistants. So
But we
we're
can
just-
call it an executive assistant if we
can.
want to. So I
Yeah,
don't, I mean,
absolutely.
I'm looking at down the road, any unintended, if it hasn't been done now, up till now, what's the point? I don't understand it. And it has no, it doesn't put them in a different class, I mean, because
No, there's, yeah, it doesn't really say much of, it doesn't say a whole lot, because we don't do job audits for these positions. Like I said, they're not under our purview. So this is for an appointed position. Elected officials get to appoint their own. They don't get competitively recruited for, because this is it's a confidential position.
Okay.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
What gives you or the board the authority to change it? The statute is 11402, and it says county officials enumerated in 11401 by and with the consent and at the salaries fixed by the board may appoint deputies, stenographers, clerks, and assistants necessary to conduct the affairs of their respective offices. And this appointment shall be in writing. And the only changes to that is, it seems to be the merit rules, where all of a sudden the merit rules claim that, oh, we can have confidential secretary, administrative assistants.
These don't fall under the merit rules. These positions aren't covered under the merit rules. They're unclassified positions appointed by the board. The titles are not relevant.
So am I hallucinating when I read something that says merit rules general, and it says exceptions, and it says all elected officials in the offices of elected board of supervisors, confidential secretary and/or administrative assistant?
Well, titles, we do title changes under our classification system. We actually would not, this is not something that we'd bring to the board without request.
Madam Chairman?
So I guess I'm not understanding the question.
No, and I
Mr.
appreciate.
Hendricks, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I appreciate Shandi's explanation. We received a request from Supervisor Bishop, and from a personnel standpoint, from my administrative staff standpoint, we looked for a vehicle to make this happen. So it was a choice that staff made to try to move this forward and get it in front of the board so you all could make a business decision on it. Whether it's absolutely correct that we made the right choice, I don't know. It is a vehicle, and we looked at consistency, so we believe that it would have been somewhat important for us if a supervisor wanted to call their staff a certain thing, that all supervisors use something similar. It makes it easier for recruitment, so you don't have people all over the map working for supervisors with different titles. So if it's something that it was a suggestion by the board, by staff, we put it in front of the board for a decision. If it's a direction that you don't want to go,
Yeah.
we can certainly change it and go back to the drawing board and come up with some other vehicle. Possibly one of the suggestions that was made here in the meeting was the board can call their staff whatever they choose if you don't want that consistency. So it's your all's choice. But staff was trying to do the best they could on coming up with a vehicle to put it in front of the board.
Yeah, I get it, but with your explanation of, if you want it to be consistent, so if Supervisor Bishop wants to call her assistant something, then we all have to change it. I don't know why, we can do whatever we want, so I don't understand. I think this is not necessary.
My thought was that HR is currently looking at titles and combining various different titles. So if we all call our assistant something different, it negates the idea that we're trying to get some uniformity and consistency throughout our human resource titles. And I just thought it was timely. If the board chooses not to go forward with this, I'm fine with that too. I think the title will help the assistants when they're dealing with other county, state, and federal officials. It just gives them a title that I think is more respectful and more in line with what they actually do for the supervisors that they serve. So is there any other discussion? All right, Supervisor Watson.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got no problem in the title change, and it probably is pretty indicative of what our people do as administrative assistants. So I'd like to make a motion for the approval of the change to BOS Administrative Assistant Secretary Elective to the board.
Motion to discuss. I have one quick question. So if we pass this, then we all have to change it? The name? That doesn't make sense. If one supervisor wants to change it, you can change it, make business cards with a new name on it. I think this is confusing.
I believe if it's passed, it'll be just like it is now. The name change will change officially in our documents, but a supervisor can call their assistant whatever they want to call them, just like they can now.
I have a question now. I guess now we're going to get into this deeper, Madam Chair. Is there a difference in pay range between executive secretaries and administrative assistants?
No, sir, there's not.
Okay, you also mentioned in here there's some of these are considered county employees and non-county employees. Aren't all people who work for electeds or appointed by electeds non-county employees?
They are county employees, they're just not under the classified category of county employee. They're unclassified, and they actually are not under the classification compensation system that we maintain. They are also do not have a grade or a range assigned to them.
And their jobs go away.
Their jobs go away if the elected official decides that.
Right, I have the same thing, because I disagree with the idea that executive secretary would hold more weight than administrative assistant when you're calling somebody, but that's just my personal preference.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I have a motion on the floor. Jenny, do we have a second? No, ma'am, we do not. All right, I need a second on the motion. I will second it myself. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Supervisor Johnson, what was your vote?
Against.
Okay, motion fails. All right, going on to public hearings. I'll open the public hearing on item number 35, discussion of possible action reference adoption of Board of Supervisor Resolution 2015-140, acceptance of response to public comments received from individuals and agencies during the 2015 Mojave County General Plan Review. The commission recommended approval by a vote 8-0. Commissioner Jones had left the meeting. Director Hunt?
Madam Chair, if I may, do we have, this is an open public hearing, do we have anybody that wants to speak before we
We have no speakers on this item.
probably
So
just
I
close
guess
that?
I can close the public hearing on it then. Thank you. So Director Hunt, if you will let us know how this went and give us an overview.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Supervisors, I would like to introduce this item and the next item also, where the 2015 General Plan Review Project is presented to you for consideration. In accordance with statutes, this review process has to be completed within 1 calendar year. We started the preparations ahead of time towards the end of last year. The board-approved public participation plan was implemented throughout the entire review process. During the past year, the Planning and Zoning Commission discussed the project at a total of 6 of their regular public meetings, with an opportunity each time for public comments. A committee consisting of 5 Planning and Zoning Commissioners, 1 from each supervisor's district, held an additional 8 workshops to further discuss the project with the public and to receive comments. A user-friendly website was available on the County Development Services website, and 118 written comments were received from various members of the public and different agencies such as ADWR and other agencies. Our staff prepared written responses for all public and agency comments. The Planning and Zoning Commission, as you mentioned at their August meeting, voted unanimously to recommend approval for the readoption of the amended 2015 General Plan. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the numerous public participants for their volunteer efforts, for the long hours of participation in the workshops, and for their valuable comments that will tremendously improve this general plan. I also want to thank the members of the Board of Supervisors for their time reviewing and numerous times discussing the project, participating in our workshops, for their valuable comments, and for their support. I want to thank the Planning and Zoning Commissioners, and especially the 5 committee members who spent endless hours participating and guiding our staff throughout the public workshop process, as well as reviewing and considering the public comments. And on that note, Madam Chair, I want to ask the board permission to make a joke.
You have my permission.
As we know, the salary of the Planning and Zoning Commissioners is zero, and considering the amount of time the commissioners put into this project, I want to ask the board to consider doubling their salary.
Absolutely.
And,
That's not really a joke. I think they should be compensated somehow. We certainly appreciate what they've done.
They did, endless hours, a lot of time they put in there. Thank you very much. And of course, I want to thank our staff that managed the process, answered the comments, and incorporated them into the final product. I want to ask Madam Chair to allow our project manager, Harold Barton, to make a 4-minute presentation of the process.
Yes, I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the board, good morning. And thank you very much, Nick, for allowing us to come up. We have just a short slideshow that we'd like to go through here and present to the board. So if we can get it turned on as we go on. For the last year, Mojave County has been in the process of completing the 2010 General Plan Review. In accordance with the state statutes, the county general plan should be reviewed every 10 years. However, Mojave County decides they'd like to do it every 5 years. So thus, we're doing it every 5 years to review the general plan. And through the entire process, the Mojave County 2015 general plan was intended to be a review, not a rewrite, not an update, just a nice, simple review process. For the existing 2015 general plan, this will be the new one the board is acting on right now. There were not a lot of changes to it, and what we did do is we updated the land use maps to bring them up to the general plan amendments that were completed over the last 5 years, and also to make the maps a lot more user-friendly, of which now when the public goes on the website, they can actually enlarge the maps so they can see their areas. And overall, there really was not a lot of text changes, with the exception of maybe some of the data, and that's the statistics that we get from the census. The primary purpose, though, of the general plan review was we had to incorporate new elements. And this is due to the reason that the county's population passed the 200,000 population threshold. And the state statutes require that for counties that size that we do have additional elements that we need to add. And those elements included open space, planning for growth areas, environmental planning element, and a cost for development element. Now, what was really great about the 2010 general plan, most of the language was already in the general plan. And so we took the 2010 language and incorporated it into the new elements, and pretty much they have a new title, but for the most part, the language is already there. In addition to the changes for the 25, we did revise the statistical data, and that's your census data where we get more of the up-to-date population figures. And what's interesting, in the 24 census estimates came out during the process. And just for the board's information, Mojave County for 2014 now, they estimated that the population of the county is 203,361. And for 2013, they downsized it a little bit to 202,855. And of course, these figures have been incorporated into the 2015 general plan. In addition, we did revise the maps and the exhibits. Exhibits would be like the number of building permits that the county's issued, and of course, the population figures. And then finally, we did complete revisions as requested by the Planning and Zoning Commission as well as the committee. And those would be like, we were requested to include information on the Indian tribes, and so that was incorporated in the general plan. We were requested to add information about the health services within the county, and that was included in the general plan. The most important facet of this process was, as Mr. Hahn stated, was the public participation. And it was during the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings last fall that they really stressed the importance of getting the word out. They wanted us to talk to as many people as possible and just to let them know what we were doing. And so one of the first things that we did was do like a big email list, and all the agencies and associations that we could get to. And some of the ones that we did send out were like to the email blast to the American Legions, Chambers, Elks Lodge, Lion Clubs, Rotaries, Seroptimus, Board of Realtors, civic organizations, the Kiwanis, Moose Lodge, schools, of which we did send emails to the principals of the high schools, as well as the VFWs. And here again was just to get the word out, to let the people know that we're here, and if you have questions, please feel free to give us a call. And additional public tools, participation tools that was implemented, of course, was the general plan website, which a lot of the comments, that's the way they were able to communicate to us, to give us comments. We used flyers, distributed flyers throughout the county. We had little business cards, small business cards that we could use, and towards a handout when we're at meetings, if somebody had, questions, we could give it that, how they could comment, how they could contact, who was the contact person. In addition, we did postings, general postings throughout the county, and we did newspaper display ads. Now, this isn't just the little one that you'll see in the ad. These were actual big eighth section ads of which the people could see. And during the public participation process, a total of 16 committee workshops were held. And these consisted of community workshops as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission meetings for the public to get the comments. And this included 2 review committee workshops were held in January, 2 additional meetings were held in March of this year. And the March 3rd specifically was about water, of which many of the supervisors were in attendance at that meeting. In February and March, the community workshops were held, and this is where we went out to the areas where we actually were in their neck of the woods, and we had meetings that were in Havasu, Lake Havasu City. We had them at Bullhead City, we had them in Kingman, Beaver Dam, as well as we went up to Dolan Springs. And it was at that time where we invited the public to come in, talk to us, listen. If they had questions, we were there for them, and to take their comments. At each of the last 7 Planning and Zoning Commissions, starting in January, the Planning and Zoning Commission did open up the public hearing for comments as well. And that here again, that was to allow the public to come in and talk to us. And if they had any comments, to give it to us, and we're here for them, because this is the public's document. This is for the citizens of Mojave County. And the pursuant to state statutes, thus through the process, we had to do what's called a 60-day comment period. That's where the state requires that we send our document out to various agencies. And it commenced on May 20th of this year and ended on July 20th. A total of 45 different agencies were sent copies of the general plan. Those included Arizona Department of Water Resources, Bureau of Land Management, Arizona State Land Department, and surrounding counties, surrounding cities, schools, as well as public service providers. Agencies which responded to it included Arizona Game and Fish, responded in writing, Arizona Department of Water Resources, Arizona State Land Department, Northern Arizona University, as well as Southwest Gas. And on that subject, a total of 118, as Mr. Hunt stated, comments were received. Those included 5 agencies, the Wallapai Indian Tribe, as well as 14 members of the public, of which 6 commented more than once. The agency comments that were incorporated in this general plan included comments, and this is the actual comments that we did place into the document, included ADWR's comments, Northern Arizona comments, the Arizona State Land Department comments, which actually were incorporated into open space, land use, and public use sections. In addition to the many agency comments we received a lot of comments from the residents. And it really is stressed one importance that a lot of these comments were incorporated into the general plan. And we just didn't accept the comments and state, okay, noted. We actually wanted to take a look at the comments and how can we utilize them in this document. And some of the comments were very good, and staff would like to thank the members of the public that sent these comments in once again. All the written comments received were attached to the Resolution 2015-140 as Exhibit A. And we included the comments as verbatim, no changes at all. These were how we received them because we just felt it was pertinent to leave them as is. And then Exhibit B, those are the actual responses. In order to respond to 118 comments, we consolidated into group because many of the comments received were like the same subject matter. And for example, a lot of comments were related to water, and so it was important that we responded to them. And here again, that's on Exhibit B for Resolution 2015-140. Finally, for today's board meeting, we do have two actions for the board as addressed by Mr. Hunt. And the first one, of course, will be for agenda item number 35 to adopt the resolution, approving the response to public comments. And these are ones necessary pursuant to state statutes. And that is not only response to public comments, but also is recommended by the Mojave County Planning and Zoning Commission as outlined in Exhibit B. And then also on agenda item 36, that's going to be the adopt resolution 2015-139. That's approving the readoption of the Mojave County General Plan. And that's as recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And so with that, I'll conclude this meeting, and thank you very much. It's been a great process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Barton. It's been an amazing process that I've been able to observe myself. I've attended most of the meetings, and I appreciate all the hard work that the commission did, all the public comments and the email comments. So thank you very much, and thank you for saving Mojave County all that money by doing it in-house and not sending it out. So with that, do any of the supervisors have any questions or comments, starting with Supervisor Johnson? None. Supervisor Watson?
No.
Supervisor Angus?
I just want to thank Mr. Barton and Ms. Taylor and Mr. Hunt. I, too, was at several of those meetings, and you seem to leave no stone unturned. Everybody had, some people were worried in the beginning of the process, but you put those worries to rest, and I want to thank you for doing a great job.
And Supervisor Moss?
I would just echo Supervisor Angus's comments. I think the Planning and Zoning Commission and Director Hunt did an outstanding job.
All right, thank you. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Second motion.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed,
Aye.
same sign. All right, going on to item number 36. I'll open the public hearing, discussion of possible action, reference adoption of the Board of Supervisors Resolution 2015-139, acceptance of the 2015 Mojave County General Plan, and to readopt as amended the 2015 General Plan pursuant to Arizona state statutes. Commissioners recommended approval by a vote of 8-0. Commissioner Jones had left the meeting at that time. I do have one person who has filled out a request to speak on this item. I have Ms. Sue Wade, if you'd like to come up and make your comments and tell us what's on your mind. If you just give us your name and address for our records.
Good morning. My name is Sue Wade. My address is 6685 North Elk Run Road in Hackberry. And I am an archaeologist, 35 years experience in the private and public sector. And I'm fairly new to Mojave County, so I was interested in the general plan update and reviewed the update information for cultural resource preservation, as obviously that's my intense interest. And I noted that in the original revision, updated general plan, that they had deleted some of the language that was already existing related to cultural resources. So at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, I pointed that out, and the Planning Department kindly reincorporated those phrases back into the general plan. But I had also asked that there be a little bit more language added, just a phrase to the end of one of the items. In one of your existing goal statements, you state, to preserve and enhance historic, cultural, open space, and recreational lands and structures, Mojave County should strive to ensure that the built environment incorporates natural and historic treasures into the everyday lives of the residents. And my suggested additional phrases, I had two options depending on which might be more appropriate for the county to use to their advantage to preserve cultural resources. So the first one suggested additional phrase, by seeking wherever feasible to preserve significant archaeological sites, historic structures, traditional cultural properties, and natural and historic landscapes. The other option would have been to add to the end of that sentence, by seeking wherever feasible to preserve historic properties that meet the criteria specified in the National Register's criteria for evaluation, 36 CFR, Part 60.4. That's pretty much the Section 106 requirements. So I'm still hoping that those phrases would be seen as advantageous to the county planning process, and that you would approve adding those to the goal statement. And I also brought a handout, which was the letter that I presented to planning staff that they reviewed, and I'm hoping that you might take a second look at that as well in support of my request. So if you have any questions, I'm open. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Wade.
Thank you.
All right, that's the end of our request to speak. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak before we close the public hearing? All right, Mr. Barton, do you want to address any of those concerns that Ms. Wade had?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. And we did meet with Ms. Wade, and she came in, at the last Planning and Zoning Commission meeting that we did have. And we did what we could in the public hearing process to implement some of the changes, but the additional language we had, we did look over it. And what happens is then if you start getting a little bit too much language that's involved, then you would have to go back through the public hearing process at the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then that might even kick back, having to go back to the 60-day review period. And due to that, and she had some excellent comments, and we actually have them, and they're very good comments, but we just, in order to the fact the general plan must be reviewed and approved in a one-year cycle, it was very important that we stay on the target schedule we have. And it was one of that was the area, and it had nothing to do with Mr. Wade's comments. It was a matter of our schedule, and we did incorporate some of the ones that we could. It's just when you get into adding new text into the document, that kind of kicks off a different avenue.
Okay, I understand. Thank you very much. And I will close the public hearing at this time unless there's any other comments from any of the supervisors. Supervisor Watson.
I just wanted to make a comment to Ms. Wade. Wanted to thank her for her input on cultural resources. They're very important to Mojave County, and to be recognized in the general plan is very important. I only had wished that she could have come forth maybe months earlier, but I just did want to say thank you very much.
All right, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. It's been seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I just want to say that the general plan review has been ongoing for the past 10, 11 months, and I see that the staff's included the latest census for 2014 that just became available, and I'm pleased to see that the tribes were included, and a lot of improvements have made. So I just want to thank you all for your participation and the comments and everything. So now we will be going on to the regular agenda. Item number 37, discussion and possible action reference adoption of the Mojave County Board of Supervisors Resolution number 2015-148, approving the abandonment and jurisdictional assignment of the United States of County Route 68, also known as Davis Dam Highway. The same indexed Davis Camp Junction Road in the 2014 County Highway User Fund project in the Lake Mead National Recreation Area for said grantee, preservation of public ingress and egress rights, maintenance of public roadway, and liability of public roadway as defined at the beginning of milepost 0 and terminating at milepost 1.21 in sections 18, 19, and 20, Township 21 North, Range 21 West of the Gila and Salt River baseline and meridian in the North Bullhead City area, and further authorize the chairman of the board to sign the attached quitclaim deed conveying all right, title, and interest in County Road 68, also known as the Davis Dam Highway, to the United States.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Item number 38, this is under Supervisor Angus, a discussion on possible action reference referral of current PTO plan to an independent outside expert for review and consideration of options. This was continued by the board at their September 8th meeting. And I'll turn this over to you, Supervisor
Madam
Angus.
Chair, I recommend no action. This really belongs in our next meeting when we talk about hopefully finalize our ideas for PTO. So I'm going to ask that it get continued and be put at the end of the, because it might be moot, we might need it, so if we can just incorporate it into the agenda item for next meeting about PTO.
Okay, thank you Supervisor Angus, and we'll have that added to that agenda. Going on to item 39, this is under Supervisor Johnson's name, discussion and possible action reference going to a zero-based budget for year 2017. This was continued at the board at their last meeting, and we'll turn this over to Supervisor Johnson to tell us what's on his mind, or ask Coral to come forward with her presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we gave it back to staff to come back with some recommendations, but I think we can, unless the board wants to go to a zero-based budgeting, immediately we could accomplish the same thing in a shorter period of time by having all departments report back to us with mandated and non-mandated services they perform. So in a department that their budget, they could break it down into those services. I believe that we have gone from, 1,412 employees down to 1,000 some. Our budget shrunk over the years. I don't believe there's any department that has fluff in it right now as far as extra employees or padding their budgets, but I think the mandated and unmandated services are what we need to look at to find out exactly where we stand. I mean, that would be my alternate suggestion, which is still a modified zero-based budget. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Supervisor
Madam
Angus,
Chair.
I see you're reaching for your...
I like that. It is sort of a modified way. I was doing a lot of research, and of course, you can find back up to whichever position you want to take. What I found was that there's a lot of government entities that are moving towards zero-based budgeting, whether it be true zero-based budgeting or sort of some kind of modified. It has worked successfully in Phoenix and in Maricopa. This morning, I spoke to a Phoenix City Councilman, Sal DiCiccio, I think that's how you pronounce his name, because they put it in, installed it in, I believe, 2012, and I wanted to know how it was working, and he says it's working well, and it's sort of like that it's done sort of as more of a volunteer basis by departments. But what he told me something this morning that I wanted to point out. He said there's a movement in Arizona to adopt GAP. And when you come up here, I'd like to hear more about that, which are generally accepted accounting principles that are used in private practices now being used in government entities. And he says that there's a move to get the state to make that a requirement for all of their other government entities. So I thought that was interesting, something that we should keep in the back of our minds. If that is the direction the state is going to have us go, then we should start thinking about it and getting there themselves. It's always better to do this locally than have the state or any other government entity tell us what to do. So with all that in mind, I would like to agree with what Supervisor Johnson said, that we can move towards something a little different.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Angus. Are there any other comments before we ask Coral to come forward?
I don't know that we need any information from her. We're the ones making the decisions. It's up to us what we want to do, and she'll implement it.
All right, well, I got to tell you that I agree with what you're saying. I think that about 80% of what we do is state mandated, and the other 20% can be considered discretionary, and I think we should be looking at that. So Supervisor Watson, I think you had a comment?
Just clarification, really. Just want to make sure that what we're doing is somewhat like a program analysis base. This is not zero-based budgeting. What we're attempting to do is to identify mandated and unmandated. So I just wanted to make that distinction between the two.
Right. Zero-based budgeting would go back to the basics. You'd start with, this is now my recorder's office, this is what I need 2 people to do this, or whatever. I believe
Years
we
ago, we
have
used to call
those.
that decision tree, but. go
Right,
ahead.
we already, I believe that there's not one department that we can point at and say they have too many people at this point, or they have fluff. So I think if we look at mandated, I think we'll be surprised at how much money we're spending on non-mandated services, and then we can make
Okay.
decisions from there.
All right.
And if we have to, I mean, we can come back to zero base, but I think we've cut so much with the recession that there is nothing left in the budget to cut.
Right, I believe we've cut over 240 positions, or at least there's that many less employees. So I just wanted to make that distinction, that this is not exactly zero-based budgeting, but will be a program of which we will be looking at mandated and unmandated. So just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hendricks, I believe you have a comment?
Now, the board at the last meeting asked Coral to come back with some implementation plan. I think it's important to place in front of the board an implementation plan and have the board all agree or vote on that plan, because we're going to have to be implementing this across the board to include elected officials and my department heads. And without that direction, definite direction by the Board of Supervisors, it's going to be difficult for staff, I believe, to impose any new requirements on our electeds and to require them to do the certain budget. In taking the information that Supervisor Johnson has just stated, we've had a conversation with him earlier and tried to develop Coral's presentation around what we believed he was trying to accomplish, because it did make a lot of sense to us, and it was a positive direction we believe that finance should go. The only thing I'm asking is, I believe it is important for Coral to present what she has proposed to comply with those wishes of Supervisor Johnson and the board, what we gathered from the rest of the board, and have the board agree that that's the direction they want to go with all the county departments and electeds.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Johnson, do you agree?
No. I mean, I'll make a motion. I mean, they have to implement. I mean, my motion would be to direct the county administrator to contact all departments, elected and non-elected, and have them bring back to the board at our December meeting a list of all mandated and unmandated services from each department, so that we'll have a chance before budget.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. Any further discussion?
I, for
Supervisor
one, would
Watson.
like to hear from Ms. Lloyd to see how her program might match what we're intending to do.
All right, well, we have a motion and a second. This could fall under discussion, and she's gone to all this work, so I'll allow that to happen. Ms. Lloyd?
I won't go into the great detail. I came prepared a little bit in case we needed to go through an implementation plan or whatnot, but I'll just say that I am in complete agreement, and I'm very excited about it. The budget process is actually my favorite part of the job, and I believe that Mojave County needs to bring it to the type of budget that you can make good decisions from, that you're well-informed, you know where the expenses are, and so I'm in complete agreement and excited to get going on it. So,
All right, thank you, and I believe the board's in agreement with that. So we have a motion on the floor. We have a second. Unless somebody has questions of Ms. Lloyd, we'll take the vote. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Coral. Going on to item number 40, this is under Kip Anderson, Mojave County Court Administrator. Discussion on possible action reference identify and approve funding for the architectural services for the Mojave County Superior Court building construction and historical courthouse remodel project for the Justice Court, and take any further action as appropriate for the design and construction of a new courthouse. I would see we have Superior Court Judge Chuck Gertler and Kip Anderson. Thank you, gentlemen.
May it please the Madam Chair, Supervisors, Council, and Administration. I picked up a cold on my trip, and so I lost my voice, and I apologize for that. So I'm going to be very brief, which you're probably very thankful for. 30 years ago when Judge Langford started this process, there was a song by the group Rush that the lyrics started out like this. To the men that hold high places, they must be the ones to start to forge a new reality closer to the heart. I, in my heart, believe that this board, each and every one of you, takes a look into your heart and your conscience in voting for what is in the best interest of the county. We have a contingency fund that is by far and away the largest contingency fund that has been budgeted since I have been the presiding judge. We respectfully request that you utilize the contingency fund to fund the architect. Indeed, the money that was transferred from the vehicle replacement fund to help fund the contingency fund is still there, and that's what you had allocated last January as in for the retention of the architect. With the utilization of those funds, you will still have a larger contingency fund that you have had, that this county has had for the past several years, and will still have a larger contingency fund at any time during my tenure as the presiding judge. And so I would request that you look into your hearts, you look into your conscience, and vote to approve the funding of the architect for the courthouse and the renovation project out of the contingency fund. Mr. Anderson.
Good morning, supervisors. I didn't have a song prepared, but I did wear purple today, Supervisor Johnson, if that'll help in any way. Sorry, I should have asked about a joke. I too, we would just ask that we relook at this. We appreciate the support in the past. We feel it's the appropriate time to make this move. If you look at the time schedule to get through this work and then to move on to getting a building built, that would line up with the quarter-cent sales tax time period that we have available to us these next few years. We continue to struggle in the building in that the security, the flow, where some of our staff work or in closets and things are just not appropriate, and we would certainly like to see us moving a direction towards a new building and rehabilitating the historic building as well. So we certainly would appreciate your support in this item. I recognize it's tough budget times. Perhaps things will be better next year, but if they're not, then we continue to struggle. So we'd really like to see us move forward. We've done a lot of good work already. The procurement department and Public Works in the work that we did earlier, so we could jump right back onto this. We have conferred with procurement and County Administrator Hendricks that we'll have to reissue it, but we could move it along quickly. So we would appreciate your support, and if you have any questions for us, we're certainly open to the questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do any of the supervisors have any questions of Kip or Judge Gertler? Supervisor Johnson? No. Supervisor Watson?
Yes, I have several questions. I could, please. In looking at identifying and approving the funding, where I'm hoping is that we're going to be identifying the funding source that will give you the product that you want at the end. What I'm very hesitant of doing is providing funding that will only give you a portion of that. What I would really like to see in this project is the complete project. And if that number is $20 million, then that's what we need to achieve, is to get those $20 million. But what I would hate to see is for us to pull back the project in order to fit the funding. And that's my concern.
Thank you, Supervisor Watson. Obviously, we need to have the architectural plans to be able to take that to Public Works and maybe an independent source to come up with an exact number. As we have right now, we have a cost estimate of 20 to 21 million. And to be frank with you, that falls in line with what will be allocated vis-a-vis the quarter-cent sales tax by time of its expiration or sunset at the end of 2019. Without taking this first step, we can't get to that next step. That's literally where we're at. We have a cost estimate right now. The National Center for State Courts did that as part of the process of looking at this. That was the part of the reason why the court, in its very conservative nature, backed down a $45 million project to $21 million. I mean, I think we've done everything that we conceivably can as a court to bring a viable project that will be good not only for the present, but also for the future without building a Taj Mahal. So we need this step in order to take that next step, Supervisor Watson.
Thank you.
Hey, Supervisor Angus.
So how much are we looking at today? Because this number's changed over this year.
Yeah,
So where are we at now?
Well, the figure that we had with the architect that the committee had chose in county procurement and public works negotiated at was approximately $1,952,000. The county had approved last January $2.5 million for the architectural services. So, you know, to be safe, do we allocate $2.5 million, hoping that again it's going to be somewhere in the $1.9 million range? You know, obviously we'd like to be safe and have that cushion, and if we don't use 600, 700, 800,000, then fine, so be it. What had happened in that process is initially it looked like it was going to be $1,450,000, and however, the architect had put in certain services as essentially a contingency. Public Works was not comfortable with that, especially, at least from my understanding, is that those contingency items were things that they wanted as mandated services, because in particular they dealt with the renovation of the existing courthouse, you know, for the benefit of the Kingman Surbat Justice Court. And so when they added in then those items that the architect had put down as contingent and put them in as mandated services, the number went up to $1,952,000.
It's interesting because, you know, you brought this before us, you know, and if we had voted when you wanted us originally to, and it was way down to 1.4, I think at some point it was under $1 million, then you would have been coming back to us and asking for more. I mean, it's just, it just seems like that number just keeps changing.
No, the board approved $2.5 million. We had estimated anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 million. And that was, as I say, then the board, in the January of 2015 meeting, approved $2.5 million towards the architectural fee. When it got down to going through the entire process and then into the negotiations, it was $1.4 million is what Public Works had informed me. But then all of a sudden they came back and said, well, wait a minute, that $1.4 million doesn't include items that we want to have mandated. And so instead it was $1.9 million. So those numbers never changed. But the board initially approved $2.5 million.
And that came out of the vehicle replacement fund.
Correct.
Right? And so where is that money now?
In the contingency fund.
No, I think it didn't come, we moved that money just into the contingency fund to beef that up, and that money was well, it was a starter money for the vehicle replacement, so it didn't come back earmarked for anything. It's sitting in the contingency fund.
Correct. That's correct. Thank you, Supervisor Johnson.
Supervisor Eng, if I can just add, yes, you know, we never did it. The Public Works was almost complete with their negotiations, and as Presiding Judge Gertler mentioned, you know, we were hopeful it would be around that $1.5 million, but they felt there was things they needed to be in there, and we obviously follow their lead and their expertise, and that's why it started to move up. We never did finalize negotiations, but we were almost to that point when all the budget stuff came up, and you know that's when the funding went away. So Annie had to cancel that procurement. So we're just hopeful we can restart it. And, you know, it would seem that if we had a 2 million or a 2.1, then that would give us enough. That would give us a good ceiling to work towards. I think, I haven't spoken with Steve Letowski again on it. I know some of these things are confidential, and I don't want to say something that Annie will throw something at and hit me with that I'm misspeaking, but I would think that would then give us enough funds and give us a ceiling that we could work towards and hopefully get this project done, come back to you in a few months, hopefully 2 or 3 months with a request to approve the architect, and then we could get this thing going. Because that was the next step, was to come back to you with an approved contract with an architect and then get your approval for that. So that's where we'd like to restart it and hopefully be back to you before the new year, and then we could start in the new year with an architect. And then, of course, our next item, we have the National Center that's available to help us with that process as well.
Okay, do you have anything else for
No, that's okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Moss? Do you have any comments, questions?
Very briefly, there's 2 general comments I have on this project. As a general matter, I think there's 2 projects we as a county have to come to grips with. One is the courthouse, and the other is a new animal shelter. When it comes to the courthouse, I think we need to take action on this for 2 reasons. One is the safety and health issue. I have worked in that building as an attorney for in October it'll be 19 years, and it is very unsafe where prisoners mingle with victims, and I think it's only a matter of time until a tragedy occurs. And secondly, and I'm referring back to the general plan comments from the lady who mentioned preservation of our cultural sites, that courthouse is a historic building. It is one of the best looking, from the exterior standpoint, buildings, one of the most prestigious looking courthouses in the state of Arizona. The internals, workings of that courthouse are not the best, and they need to be renovated, they need to be improved. And getting additional judicial space while improving the interior so it continues as a functional judicial building, I think is in the interest of Mojave County.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Moss. You know, my comment is I support the concept of building the new courthouse. I think the finished structure is going to be something that's going to celebrate our history, and it's going to be a permanent display that's going to inspire future generations. I just don't know about the timing right now, and I'd kind of like to hear from our county administrator to see or to ask, when do you think that the quarter-cent sales tax will have enough money in the fund to where we can start building the courthouse? And I need an idea of how long, if we approve this architectural item, that will be good for. I mean, does it expire after a few years? Will we have to amend that as time goes along? So if you could help me with those 2 items. Supervisor Hendricks.
Madam Chairman, a couple of issues I'd like to bring out. One regarding when I believe that we would construct the courthouse. I believe, and I would not recommend otherwise, that we would not start construction of the courthouse until we had sufficient funds in the bank to pay for it, or we had a guaranteed revenue source that would provide the funds to where we could, in essence, borrow off of that guaranteed revenue source to start the project early. On the hiring of an architect, I did send out to the board a memo regarding the county's finances last week, and one of the things that memo was from is our finance director, and she came into my office last week, and even though we have a contingency, that contingency actually carries us, that balance, that fund balance actually carries us and pays our bills month to month until we can gain our revenues from property taxes. And what Coral had told me, Ms. Lloyd had told me, was that she was concerned that we were going to be able to pay our our bills because we had depleted that fund balance, that operating capital. I call it operating capital, but it actually isn't. And we also had an extra month to go in October to where we would be paying before we get our property taxes in. So that's how important fund balance is. You know, it carries us throughout the year because we don't borrow money as a government. We pay our bills based on the revenues that we receive. We receive state shared revenues, but that's on a monthly basis, and that's a minor portion of the of our revenue stream. Otherwise, it's bi-yearly. And so we have to have sufficient monies to carry us through the time that we don't get that monthly payment. And I asked Coral, I said, did you transfer the $3 million over? And she goes, no, I don't believe I did. Well, we checked, and that $3 million from the vehicle replacement fund hadn't been transferred over. And that's what actually is carrying us through this September. And we're going to be very, very close in October. So if you want our finance director to expound on that or to try to give you the latest information, she was going to check all of her figures and verify what we had in our discussion was accurate. So that might be the best recommendation I can give you at this time if you're going to make a decision on moving forward with architectural services, is to get the most up-to-date information from our finance director on what the county finances are and ask her to come up and speak with you.
Madam Chair, may I briefly respond?
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. Yes.
I think history is a very good indicator of what we're dealing here, especially when it comes essentially to this cash flow issue. This board approved in January 2015 $2.5 million to go towards the retention of an architect. We were at the end of August, 8 or 9 months later, from the time that the board approved the use of those funds, and we still had not used those funds. Now, we anticipate that we'll be able to do this process quicker than 9 or 10 months like last go-round. But I don't anticipate that we're going to have an architect in October. I don't anticipate that we're going to have an architect in November. I don't anticipate that we're going to have an architect in December, because we have to, again, go through this entire process of putting it out, noticing it, bidding it, doing the pre-bid meeting, going through the process of forming the committee, having the committee review the applications, determining who you're going to interview, conduct the interviews, and then you finally get to the point of negotiating, and all of that has to occur before we come back to the board. That's not going to happen by October.
So you're saying that the process will take about a year, maybe less, and then once that's done, how long is that architectural design good for?
We're anticipating that it's going to take 4 to 7 months based upon past history. Then from there, they're telling me that, you know, other presiding judges and administrative offices of the court that have gone through this process, they're going, you can anticipate a full year before you're going to have plans. And then from there, you're going to have the county reviewing those plans, because they're going to want to make sure that it meets their specifications, that they're comfortable taking it out to bid. We're talking at a minimum probably a 2-year process here. By the time the architect, you know, is online and we have a finished product that's approved by the county, we're already talking, you know, the end of 2017, the start of 2018. And to go out to bid with a contractor, you're not looking until, at best, mid-2019, early 2020, and the quarter-cent sales tax sunsets in December of 2019. This puts us in line from a time frame standpoint to actually move this forward in a timely manner.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. That explains a lot to me. It kind of gives me a timeline that I didn't have before or understand. Supervisor Johnson, yes.
I mean, when we want to talk about history, we just went through a budget process. I mean, if people haven't remembered that, which was hard decisions, and we got another one coming up, which is going to be even harder than we had. We're in discussions now regarding PTO, merit increases, retention of employees. The quarter-cent sales tax is what's used to fund this, not the general fund. We don't have enough money in the quarter-cent sales tax to even pay for a completed building. I think our decision today is if we have $2.5 million to spend, where are we going to spend it at? It's not, not whether the court is the best option or something else. I don't think we have $2.5 million laying around to spend on anything.
Okay, I'm hearing different things here. I'm hearing we've got the biggest contingency fund that we've ever had, and then I'm hearing concerns that we addressed when we were going through the budget process. So I think it's timely that Ms. Lloyd comes up and kind of tells us where we are. And I agree, this next budget year is going to be taxing as well. And
Good morning again. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about this. This is a tough issue. And again, I'm not for or against moving the funds for the architectural services. However, in follow-up to what Mr. Hendricks mentioned, we are hopefully going to be able to pay all of the bills by the end of October. I realize, we all realize that the procurement of the architect will not impact us this quarter, this fiscal year, this fall. It's next budget year that I have concerns about. So we budgeted to begin and essentially end the fiscal year breaking even with all of the actions that you took. The movement of the vehicle replacement money back by the end of next fiscal year would result, if we spent none of that at budget time, was moving us to about $15 million. The recommendation, my best recommendation to you, is not changed in all these months, would still be to have a fund balance of about 25% based upon the county's revenue sources. You don't have a monthly recurring revenue really besides the monthly state shared sales tax. Of that amount, we actually have to budget $20 million, but you receive about $10 million. Well, a little more than $10 million, but $10 to $11 million. It's about $1 million a month that we receive. Our bills for the general fund are about $6 million a month in total between payroll and the ongoing operations. So the concern is that if we have to spend an entire $2 million of the $2 million that we're gaining, and I say $2 million we're gaining because at the end of this year, post-prediction, about $250,000 to $300,000 in PILT revenue didn't come through. As of last week, the revenues and expenses for the general fund, once we'd posted all of the bills through the end of June, we are upside down $1 million. And initially, we were projecting about $400,000. And then we added the PILT money, we're up to about $700,000. And then the remaining $300,000 is, in general, just the difference between the revenues and expenses of exceeding. So in reality, we're going to have to take $1 million of that money just to break even. So that leaves us with the $2 million. If we spend all of that, then my caution would be getting through next July, August, September, and October, unless something changes dramatically. So that would be my concern. I hope I didn't overly bore you with that, but that's just the cautionary statement on doing that we are at that point. This is definitely not the highest fund balance Mojave County has ever experienced. Definitely not. I think that this is about as close as you've ever been.
Madam
Right.
Chairman?
Thank you. Yes, Mike Hendricks.
I also want to, so that I can clarify the architectural expenditures. It will be at least 4 months before we've got to re-advertise and we've got to re-propose for an architect. So it would be about 4 months before, if you all approved going forward with an architect, it would be about 4 months before we even had an architect on board. You have to finalize a contract, which took considerable amount of time. You don't start paying an architect until he starts work on the project. So basically, it's a very accurate statement the judge had that it would be a year before the architectural plans would be complete, probably after you procured an architect for his services. So the payments would be on percentage of completion and plans. Let's say you did 30 60, 100%, depending on how the contract is structured, he would be paid varying amounts throughout that year of design. I just wanted to make that clarification. So your payments would actually start in 2017, or I'm sorry, 2016, and it would be through the 2016 calendar year.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any other questions for Ms. Lloyd?
I do.
Supervisor Watson?
Ms. Lloyd, when we started the budget process this last go-around, there were several comments that were made that Mojave County has plenty of money. And at that time, I interjected that we don't have plenty of money, that the money that we've got in contingency funds is only enough money to run Mojave County for approximately 2 months. In order for Mojave County to run functionally well, because of our revenues incoming are totally dependent on the property tax and the quarter-cent sales tax, but that goes into a different fund, is a requirement for Mojave County to be looking at more than 2 months of contingency funds in order to operate in those months. I had just heard you say 25%. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you're indicating to us that we're possibly too much short of our goal in contingency funds in order to have the proper revenues in order to run the Mojave County properly?
The minimum standard is about 2 months, the 16.67%, which we were able to, I believe we were able to achieve by the end of that year, by the end of last year, by June 30. It's going to be very close. That's the minimum threshold. For the critics would say, well, some counties are higher, some counties are lower than that. ATRA actually released a document in August summarizing where counties stood. And Mojave County was right in the middle of the pack at the minimum of 2 months of the fund balance. However, when you really get to analyzing the difference between the various counties, how could one county continue for those 4 months time period, if you will, on 12%? I think one county had up to 30% or in excess of 30%. But the difference would be in our revenue sources of how the revenue flows. And overall, we probably all issue expenses basically the same, but really it's the revenue structure. So several of the counties have a much higher excise tax base. They have it at a 0.5 cent for their general operations. They have some of the districts separate in a tax base, if you will, in an excise tax base, similar to what we have, the building construction fund of various amounts. So that would be essentially the difference between any other county and ourselves.
Okay, I just have one more question for clarification in my mind. The real problem is our revenues being basically coming in twice a year. Is that correct?
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
So if our revenue were different, say we were to look at a quarter-cent sales tax and reducing the property taxes, then that revenue stream would help in making sure that we have delivery of revenues to pay our bills. Is that correct?
It definitely would. And again, thinking about that, I thought a lot when I saw the item come through on the agenda, that if we currently receive about $500,000 in the quarter-cent sales tax, and nothing would change for the projection. Well, it's in excess of that, but for round numbers. And so that's equivalent to about $500,000 over 4 months. 5 times 4, that'd be an extra $2 million that we would have potentially for July, for those 4 months, those first 4 months, which should be sufficient to get by, combined with the $12 million balance that we currently carry. So those are the basic concern. When you go at least to a 25% to a 30% contingency fund balance or cash balance, whatever you want to call it, then you are combining that balance to carry you forward with monthly revenues as they come in during those first 4 months. So I think that you could, see the treasurer's report. The treasurer's been reporting that cash balances across all districts are declining, so this is not unique to Mojave County. It's the first time that I've experienced being so close where I actually had to go to the manager and say, wow, we may not be able to pay our bills. So we are going to have to do something different, either hold payables. We certainly have to meet payroll. Hold payables, do that differently next year. We'll have to do something. I don't want to pay late, but we can't run into the negative. And I don't know what the legal ramifications are. I haven't worked with the treasurer on, Mojave County getting into the situations that a few other entities came where we didn't have enough wherewithal to pay our bills for those 4 months and then have to borrow from a district or something. I mean, that's not what I would recommend that we go with this.
Thank you, Ms. Lloyd. I'm just hoping that everybody that sits on this board is listening to Ms. Lloyd of what she has to say. And with that, I'll stop.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Watson. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Supervisor Moss, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Oh, yeah, for Ms. Lloyd, just to make sure I understand something. I'm not really sure if I tracked your comments correctly from several minutes ago, but I want to make sure I understood it. When it comes all out in the wash, you're anticipating at the end of this budget year, assuming nothing unforeseen pops up, that we'll have $2 million net. Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
$12 million at the end of each of the budget years, but that we would have $12 million.
Well, I'm talking about for this individual budget year, that there'll be a net $2 million from income versus expenses from all sources.
For FY16?
Correct.
Okay. So I do expect that we would hold the $2 million, the $2 million of the $3 million that we transferred back from the vehicle maintenance fund, that we would retain that.
Right. Okay. So it's, from your standpoint, when would it be the proper time to decide whether to fund the architect fee, assuming that it is a $2 million expenditure or anticipated $2 million expenditure?
It depends on the timing of the outgoing expenditure, and it depends on the action of the board in terms of revenue structures for FY16-17.
Okay. And how much do we have in the quarter-cent sales tax account right now?
I believe 15 million.
And that's earmarked for a particular purpose as of right now. Is that correct?
Correct. We have between 15 and 18. I don't remember what it is now at the end of the year, but we are planning on taking that to pay off the jail early in order to save the interest on the jail, the balance of the jail payments, and then that money would be combined with the remaining 3 years of the sales tax revenue to achieve the $20 to $21 million in total to provide you the ability to work on some other buildings.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
I just want to make sure for the public that's listening,
Okay.
how much will we be paying off the jail for, and when will that jail be paid off?
We are keying that for this spring, for spring of 2016. So by April of 2016, we are hoping to pay that off.
And how much will that cost?
I believe it is the 18 million.
And at that time, the
Is it higher
quarter-cent
than
sales
that?
tax money would have how much in it?
That would essentially drain the fund.
To zero.
Correct.
Okay, which is why we're talking about the $2 million from the general fund
That's
for
correct.
the architectural fees. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lloyd.
You're welcome.
All right, it looks like discussion is finally ended on this item number. I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that this item be brought back to us in April of 2016.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Did you get the motion, Jenny?
Supervisor Moss, can you repeat that? I didn't hear you.
That we continue this item until April of 2016.
Okay, I'll second that.
We have a motion on the floor, seconded. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Going on to item 41. I don't know if this is even necessary, but we do need to vote on it. Discussion of possible action, reference, accept, and authorize expenditure of $30,000 State Justice Institute funds plus a cash match of $50,000 to be transferred from Superior Court Improvement, other funds, 605-10703, and approve a new origin code and amend the budget to reflect monies to be received and transferred. Mr. Kip Anderson.
Yes, supervisors, thank you. I have been in touch with the State Justice Institute, and there's some flexibility in us being able to hold this grant open or have it available to us. So I think we'll be okay until April. I hope we will be. I'll certainly follow up with them. So perhaps this item could also be continued to that same time frame. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have a request to table this item to April 2016. So I don't think,
I'll make that motion, Madam Chair.
thank you, Supervisor Moss. We have a motion.
Would like to make one comment before we go any further.
Supervisor Watson, you have the floor.
I have for Kip Anderson. Kip, this $30,000 from the state institution funds, if at some point in time those become in jeopardy, you'll notify the board immediately?
You bet. I'll get a hold of them, later today or this week and verify the timing on that. And
Okay, you might want to make sure that we keep that inclusive of the of the motion that's been made.
yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you.
I guess, Madam Chair, to go along with that, so we're giving $50,000 to get $30,000?
Well, no, not really. Let's look at it a different way. We're going to get $30,000, but we need a total of $80,000 to procure the services of the National Center. We've gone to the state. Good. I appreciate your point, Supervisor Johnson. We've gone to the State Justice Institute. I think this is our fourth time, and I'm surprised that they granted us another one because they look at grants nationwide. But we've developed a good relationship, especially with the National Center. And I think their expertise would be very helpful in this process. It would help us with the architect. We could count on them to make sure things were done properly, like you mentioned earlier, Supervisor Watson, making sure things were done right. So what we did was we wanted to make sure the grant, we could get this money, and so we were willing to take some of our local law library funds. That's probably where we'd have to take the money out of. Those funds are set aside for buildings and things, or one of the other small balances we have, and supplement that. So I would look at it a slightly different way, but I appreciate your comments.
Right. And I appreciate all the work that KIP goes through to get these grants, but I think we've got a budget coming up, and we're in trouble. And the idea that we're just pushing these things off till April when there's no fiscal way we can cover them is crazy to me. That's all.
Madam Chair, I'd like to amend my motion that we table this item until April. A request that Mr. Anderson notify the board in the event that these funds become in jeopardy.
All right, we have a motion on the floor that's been amended.
May I say something?
Yes, Supervisor Angus.
Again, to remind everybody, when the quarter-cent sales tax was implemented, the courthouse was the first on the list. And it was previous boards made decisions, and that is why we are here today. And, we find ourselves in situations that maybe previous boards didn't count on, but I feel that it is unfortunate that the courthouse that does need to be fixed finds itself now having to beg for the money that was supposed to have come to them in the beginning. So I apologize for that, but we are in the situation that we are in, and I have to vote according to that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. I hear no second.
Wait a minute.
Wait a second.
I think I will second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Do you have any comments in addition?
Can you read the motion again?
They have an amended motion that hasn't been seconded yet.
The amended motion is to continue the item to April 2016. However, that Mr. Anderson would notify the board if the grant was in jeopardy prior to that date.
And a second the amended.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor that was amended. It has been seconded. If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes by majority vote. Going on to item number 42. This is under Supervisor Moss's name, discussion of possible action reference accepting cash payments at county offices. We have several people that have signed up to speak. I'll begin by calling Mr. Carls DeShazer. Good morning. If you'll please give us your name and address and tell us what you think on this item.
Yes, my name is Charles DeShazer. I live at 7978 Polaris Road out in Topok. The reason I'm here today, it may not make any difference to anybody else, but it's something that upsets me that the treasurer has chosen not to accept cash in either Bullhead or Lake Havasu for the 2 weeks that they plan to be open for tax collection this year there. I have to start off by bringing up a historical point in order to make my point, and that's the way that Arlington Cemetery was formed happened to be General Robert E. Lee owned the property. He was fighting on the wrong side of the lines at the time, and he sent a messenger to deliver his taxes for the 634 acres that form Arlington today. And the tax collector refused to accept his taxes, and eventually the property went to the U.S. government. After that, the Lee family sued to get the property back. Even though they offered up the taxes, the U.S. Supreme Court decided that, based on an earlier case of Atwood versus Weems, that when the tax collector refuses to accept payment, the payment is considered accepted. So they returned the property to the Lee family, and then because there were dead Confederate soldiers buried on the front lawn, which ruined the property values, the U.S. government ended up having to buy that property back for an exorbitant amount of money. Basically, that brings me to the second point. I don't know how without going before this board, the treasurer on their own could make a decision to say, we'll collect cash in Kingman, but not in Bullhead or in Lake Havasu City. It doesn't really matter to me whether or not, you have to pay cash, credit card. They're charging extra premiums for using a credit card or a debit card. But if they're going to accept cash payments in Kingman, they need to accept them in all of the various offices, even if they're only open for 2 weeks out of the year. I've been told that it's going to cost an extra $50,000 to collect cash payments at those two offices for those 2 weeks. I can't understand how that's possible, but that's not my problem. They need to find a way to either say no cash or we're going to accept cash everywhere.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. All right, next we have Amanda Kaufman. She had to leave at 10:15, and she did write a written statement, which I told her I would read into the record. Ms. Kaufman writes that she is in favor of our county treasurer's office continue accepting cash payments at all county office locations. Cash is U.S. legal tender, see U.S. Statute 31, U.S. Code 5103, and is an accepted form of payment to creditors for things such as tax payments. Private entities may have exclusions, but the county is a public entity and cash payments are legal tender. Anyone handling cash funds on behalf of the county should pass a background check and be subject to consequences if they participate in any illegal activity. So that is Ms. Kaufman's written statement. Next, I have signed up to speak as Ms. Julia Dollarhide. Julia, if you'll approach the podium and tell us what's on your mind. And we have our treasurer, Ms. Cindy Landa Cox. So,
I believe that Ms.
good morning,
Cox would
Julia.
like to speak first before I do.
That'll be fine.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Julia. Good morning, supervisors and staff. I'd like to address just first the issue to why I made the decision for cash not to be in the offices. That was not a decision that I made. I'm fully in favor of fully functional satellite offices that work exactly as ours do. In fact, I submitted a new initiative for the fiscal year 2016 budget to open both the Bullhead and Lake Havasu City offices full-time. Unfortunately, the cost that was quoted in the initiative was solely operational costs and did not include any required retrofit or capital expenses, which would include mechanical cash counters, bulletproof glass, video surveillance, Loomis services, safes, cash counters, and other security measures. I was told this by our risk manager at the time, Bob Prince. When we talked about having cash there, we had changed the policy in the office here in Kingman that no longer could one person hold cash. Two people have to be with cash at all times. And that was blessed by the risk management area. Additionally, that initiative was a little less than $200,000. And why I put it there was so that you had the choice. You had an option. Here, this is what it costs us to have these offices open operationally, because I promised I would put that out and let you guys make the decision, because you are the board. You make those decisions. I don't know legally what the Constitution, apparently, presumably this is about a perceived Arizona constitutional requirement for the county treasurer to accept cash for tax payments and at all the county treasurer's locations, and that's up to our county attorneys or whatever attorneys we choose to look at to make that decision. That's not for me. I went to the county attorney and asked, what's my legal requirement for having cash there, because I cannot afford to put two people at the satellite offices for 4 weeks. And I was given an opinion from our county attorney, I did not have to take cash there. So that's when we did it. And then in 2014, I put a public service announcement, wrote a memo to the board stating that. I wrote a memo when I opened them in the beginning of this year to the board as well that said we are not taking cash payments. So it's been, and did a public service announcement in all of the newspapers and on the radio to make sure that people were aware this was the issue. If the Board of Supervisors, one of the things in the fiscal year 2016 budget was we were told no new initiatives, but I put it in so you could see it, and cut services. And that's what we tried to accomplish, and our budget was cut $188,000. If the Board of Supervisors, first, I'm in favor of this, but if the Board of Supervisors requires cash to be accepted, we must initially shut down the Lake Havasu and Bullhead satellite offices for the first half payments, because we simply do not have the budget or the time to hire and train the additional staff, and certainly not enough time to retrofit each of these offices, because it's the 21st of September, by the time in October when we get there, so that we have the same security provided in Kingman. When we did the remodel here in Kingman, I wanted the bulletproof glass to be removed because I felt it was really, not something that says, welcome to our office, we're happy you're coming to pay your taxes. I felt it was not the friendly environment we wanted to portray. But for security reasons, I was told by our risk manager that we would put ourselves in a very bad liability situation because we have already said, here's the bulletproof glass, we perceive there's an issue. So if we took it down, now we would be held to a higher standard. I don't know if this is true, but this is what I was told. We would be held to a higher standard legally because we then took it down. So if something happened to any of the employees. So it's just a matter of money. And if I had to do it this October, legally, take cash in both of those offices, I would be down 4 employees in my office, which would preclude any of the things that we've already put in place for the last 6 months to process and be up to date with payments in no less than 1 week from the time that we receive the check. That's our mission. I don't have people that understand how to do this that could take tax payments outside of the office with any kind of, 2 of them. So the minimum it could cost us is an additional 2 employees, because we did put the 1 employee for the period of time into our fiscal year 2016 budget for temporary help, and you approved it, and I appreciate that, so that we could have the satellite offices open. I want them open. That's important to me, that we reach out to the communities that have a lot of people that would like to come and pay cash other than just in Kingman. So, any questions that you have for me?
I do have one question. If we don't accept cash in our satellite offices, and we're only accepting checks or cashier's checks or money orders, why do we have satellite offices? Why can't they just mail them in like?
There are many constituents of yours and mine that have voiced the opinion that the offices are very helpful to them, that they want to do it in person, and that it is very difficult for them to get here. So what we've done is set up instructions that say where the closest bank is, where the closest market is that you can go to get a cashier's check, where you can pay by cash but not at our window, because it puts the security of our employees and the people that are there paying in a very precarious position, security-wise. Legalities, our options right now are open it and not take cash, or don't open them for this year. If you'd like to do something in April, I'm happy to do that, but that will cost, as I said, in terms of what we would need, according to risk management, we would need bulletproof glass, we would need our offices back, we would need to staff 4 people, we would need safes and cash counters and all the things that we normally have.
How often do we get cash-paying customers at the satellite office?
How often? We're open for 2 weeks, and it's intermittent, and it's about, let me see what the percentage was. $166 taxpayers. That was from 2013. We did not keep track in 2014 because we only took it for for the spring, and that's a very small quantity.
Okay, if you'll just stand by and answer questions for the rest of the supervisors. Supervisor Angus, go ahead.
All right. In Bullhead City, there are other offices there. There's environmental health, zoning. They take cash, I assume. True? So are we having a different standard for the treasurer, and why would that be? I mean, it's very low staffed, believe me, down there in Bullhead City. So why now? So what I'm hearing is that you're abiding by a arbitrary policy given to you by the risk manager, and I don't remember it ever coming before the board. True? I mean, have we had the issues that would have, you know, has there been issues down in the satellite offices?
If I can address the issue, I'm Bill Barker, the Chief Deputy. I don't know about the other offices you're talking about, but we do accept, when we used to accept cash, and I would really prefer not to discuss the numbers, it was significant. And I don't think anybody would be collecting the kind of money that comes in on the tax payments.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
That's where the risk lies.
People are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash.
The most amount that we received in any given day was $30,000 in one day. And the 100,000 was over the aggregate.
period.
But the highest single day was around 30,000.
Geez, you can't
Again,
even
that's a lot of
deposit that kind of money in a bank and not have to go through all the different stuff. So we say, even if that we don't ask any kind of questions if people show up with $30,000 in cash?
I tell you what.
Here, not at all.
We
We
get,
take in large
Okay,
sums of
all right, so we're getting back to policy. So this policy that the risk manager, and I think I know when all that happened, does that have to come before the board?
Supervisor Angus, Madam Chair?
Yes, go ahead,
I
Supervisor
think the
Johnson.
first thing we should do is probably ask the county attorney Ekstrom whether the treasurer does it or doesn't. I don't think we have the authority to tell her how to collect money or what kind of money she can or cannot collect, no matter what our personal feelings are. Is that true?
Madam Chairman, Supervisor Johnson, the elected officials have a considerable amount of discretion in how they perform their statutory functions. The board has some supervisory authority over the elected officials, but as a rule, they make their own determinations on matters that are not of great consequence. In terms of running the treasurer's office, I mean, it's her call to decide how she wants to do it. She tried to accommodate the taxpayers by opening up a couple offices out of this community, but the place she primarily performs the functions of her office is here at the courthouse. And the Constitution in Arizona says you shall pay your taxes in money, and the case law says that means money. The question we had, I didn't decide this, but I think it's a good accommodation, is it within the scope of the treasurer's authority to make a discretionary decision to not accept cash in the sub-offices, which aren't really required by law, as a kind of a reasonable condition of performing that extra function for the taxpayers. And while the Constitution talks about money, arguably any money that comes in to pay taxes should be coming into this building, this facility, and the county seat. So anything else she decides to do is kind of an extra, where she can set some conditions on that. The hours they have, and the sub-offices don't have to be the same that they have here, because they have discretion to decide at those kind of offices that they won't be open from 8 till 5. So hopefully that answers your question. I would say it's a decision that the treasurer can make. There's some legal arguments that would support it. And there's no, I mean, looking at it, there's really no case law in Arizona that defines it since 1930, when they talked about whether the treasurer could legally take checks or not. And they ultimately said, well, they could, and that was okay, but it didn't talk about whether or not they could refuse money, so.
If I may, Madam Supervisor?
Yes, Cindy, go ahead.
Also, Mr. Ekstrom, did you also address this morning with me? I thought we had talked about the law that the gentleman was speaking about in terms of the case that he was talking about, and that the law that the
Madam
treasurer
Chairman, I
has
think
to...
she's making reference to the fact that if you tender, legal tender, and it's not accepted, that the bill's automatically paid. And it was our view that that's a good historical principle, a good common law principle, but in terms of the operation of this office, it wouldn't apply.
That's what I was told.
Yeah,
So,
that's-
and I tend to look to our county attorney for those kind of laws, the legal opinion.
Okay.
If I could, Madam Chair,
That's interesting. I can't believe that we could refuse to accept cash, but, Supervisor Moss, go ahead.
The reason I have this placed on the agenda is first I want to compliment and applaud Treasurer Cox. I think she is doing the best she can with taxpayers throughout Mojave County with the resources she has available to her. My putting this on the agenda had nothing to do with any sort of upset with Treasurer Cox. I don't have that. I believe she's done an outstanding job. The reason I put her on the agenda is, and I think we've heard it, is I don't want to lawyer for the county, but the proposition that I learned in law school, especially when it comes to government agencies, if cash is brought to you and you refuse it, the debt is treated as paid. And I thought there was a potential for exposure to Mojave County, and I wanted to bring that to the attention of the board, and I wanted to get a legal opinion out of Attorney Ekstrom. And I really do think it would behoove the board to refer this to Attorney Ekstrom for a written legal opinion, just to make sure that we are covered. There's some federal law that applies, and my understanding is that private businesses can accept any method of payment they choose by their own profit, well, not any method, but they have some more flexibility in accepting payment. But the governments have much less flexibility under federal law. State law, I'm familiar with the case that Attorney Ekstrom decided, and he is correct. State law is very old on the issue, and they answered one part of the equation but not the other. But both federal and state law apply on this issue, and I really think it behooves us to get a legal opinion just to make sure Treasurer Cox and the Board of Supervisors is covered on this issue.
Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Moss. Supervisor Johnson, you have the floor.
Supervisor Moss, I don't know that we need that so much as the Treasurer Cox might need it, because she has a bond. I think that's what sets her apart from the other ones. She has a bond, so if there's any kind of a lawsuit, it goes against her bond, not against the board. I realize that a good attorney can always sue everybody, but I would think the opinion should be requested by the treasurer if she sees so instead of us.
And I understand what you're saying, Supervisor Johnson, and I agree with you largely. The problem I have, or the quandary I think we face, is we all know why we have satellite offices. It's because we don't have the money to open up full time. And Treasurer Cox, I think with the support of the board, has opened satellite offices for a limited period with limited resources and has made the decision, which from a practical matter is a very good decision from a practical matter, to not take cash so she can keep her manpower requirements lower. I do not want the satellite offices to close. In fact, I want them to expand and grow. But from that, the money, since we have put her in this quandary, to some degree, I think that we should, to some measure, provide her some protection, if it exists, by getting a professional legal opinion that deals with the specifics of this issue. Because even if Mojave County in the state of Arizona has not dealt with it, I'm relatively sure that somewhere in these 50 states, some state has dealt with it, and because it's a combination of federal and state law that applies. And I don't want to overtax her resources if we can avoid it. And I really would like the county attorney's office to either do it themselves or farm it out. Either way doesn't bother me. But we really do need a formal written opinion.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Moss. And I just had a thought. If the satellite offices are located in Lake Havasu and Bullhead City, and we have other county offices at those locations also taking cash, could they not transport those monies to the bank together? And then they wouldn't have a single person transporting cash in a vehicle without any kind of security. It's just something I was going to throw out there. I don't know if that's feasible or not, but
we could look at it. I'm sorry. We could look at that. I think that the issue for us is the variance in the dollar amount we're talking about. I mean, when you're talking about, for example, the recorder's office who charges a $2 fee, how much money are they going to collect if they see 1,000 people? And how much are we going to collect during one day? And how does that, do you know what I'm saying? And I have made strides to overcome the policies we put in place for safeguarding in terms of who can move the cash. Can they go in county vehicles? We had temporary employees out there, and we were told by risk management, your temporary employees cannot carry checks, cannot carry the documents in their own car because they can't drive our county car pool. So we've overcome a number of objections to keep these offices open, and the biggest thing was, okay, so cash is the hugest issue that we have. What do we do? So I went to the county attorney and got an opinion. That was the very first thing that I did. Had risk management evaluate the offices, and that's what they came up with. All of us together. I'm not blaming anyone. I'm saying that's what we came up with as a solution to make sure that we were there and people had the opportunity to physically see us, because there are a lot of people that look to that. They want to know their envelope, whether it's a check or whatever, gets in the hand of a Treasury employee. That's what we've been told. So.
All right, well, maybe this is something that our new risk manager, we should tax him with to look at as one of his first challenges.
Maybe this is the thing that the last risk manager caused. I mean, when was the last time a treasurer's office was robbed? Is there some kind of a big ring going around robbing treasury offices or county offices? I mean, the idea that somebody can't come in and pay cash is just crazy to me. But I mean, if Supervisor Moss would make a motion on getting the opinion, maybe we can move on this.
Yeah, I make a motion that we task the county attorney's office with legal opinion as to whether Treasurer Cox can decline cash at our satellite offices. And then, as part of that motion, I would also request that Treasurer Cox engage with our new risk manager, if and when he's hired, to figure out how she can overcome these obstacles from a practical standpoint.
All right, thank you, Supervisor Moss, for the motion. And do we have a second? We have a motion and a second, and we apparently have more discussions. So, Julia, did you want to say something? I'm sorry that...
Thank you. I realize a lot of this is very technical and legal, but I wanted to let you know that I come before you today of my own volition and not as a part of my employment with the county currently in the Treasurer's office. Before my departure from the financial industry, I served in several positions, including a Chief Operations Officer for a bank, the Bank Security Officer, Secrecy Act Officer, Chair of Compliance Committee, Audit Committee, and other capacities that I feel gives me the expertise to speak on this issue. In regard to Supervisor Johnson's comment, no, you probably do not hear about a lot of offices, Treasury offices being robbed, but what I can tell you is that it only takes once. Security and the safety of all county employees is a very serious matter, requiring careful consideration. The seasonal operation of these offices for the acceptance of tax payments is already laden with risk for several of the items that you've already heard, including lack of sufficient camera systems, bulletproof glass, and the other amenities that are very much needed here in Kingman. You would be surprised what it's like to have a very agitated customer across from you, and you are very grateful that the bulletproof glass is in place. Current staffing model utilizes one employee for each office. You know this. This is not a preferred security model for financial transaction processing. Dual control is always the minimum standard. And it's not simply for security of the financial data, it's for security of the employees themselves. Do not labor under the false pretense that financial transactions are not being conducted. They are, or that there's no inherent risk to accepting a check. There is. The Treasurer's office functions, in essence, as the bank for the county. The real property and personal property taxes collected can be hundreds of dollars to, yes, thousands of dollars for each payment. And no, as a government agency, you do not collect information about the people. All the cash that you deposit in the bank is not subject to Bank Secrecy Act. You're a government agency. The criminal element could abscond with more cash than a local Quick Stop convenience store at this rate. Why give them another reason to do so? Do you know that Arizona ranks typically in the top 5, and I believe has since 2009, for identity theft? What more do you need than a person's check information, including their name, their address, their bank, their routing number, and their bank account number, in order to use then any of the apps and social media to discover more information about them, including parents' names, your pet's name, and all the typical security questions in order to start an account takeover? Checks are important too. People are important. All of this is that I would say I have direct experience in this because, yes, I have been robbed at gunpoint at a former institution for which I worked back in Pennsylvania. It is not fun. They don't even care that you see who they are. They didn't wear gloves. And yes, they came in fully armed with semi-automatic weapons, right in the face, jump over the counter, and they're next to you, and you do anything they tell you at that point. I'd rather not ever have a county employee face this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jenny, would you read the motion?
Well, Madam Chair, somebody here just accused me of not caring about county employees or security. I'm not sure how long this person has actually worked for the county, but when I got here, there was no security in the buildings at that time in Lake Havasu or the other areas. In Lake Havasu, I went to install an alarm system to at least begin, which the Treasurer's Office refused to take part in at the local area. And when you talk about, maybe I don't know about irate citizens, I guarantee I probably run into more irate citizens than you have in the Treasurer's Office, where you're supposed to be just conducting regular business of collecting checks. And I think it has more to do with attitude than anything else. When you talk about working in customer service, you think you're doing us a favor by coming to Havasu and Bullhead and opening from, 9 to 3? I mean, what normal business hours are 8 to 5. Then you're closing during the lunch hours. Don't come up and lecture the board on how we don't understand security for the employees. I think the previous boards and this board have done an awful lot to enact things that secure it for the employees. At the same time, we have public who we're not supposed to be afraid of. If the courts would do a better job of putting people in jail so they weren't back on the streets, maybe we'd have a better job there. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. Jenny, could you read the motion, please?
It's to task the county attorney's office to give a legal opinion whether the treasurer can decline cash, and to request that Treasurer Cox also engage with our new risk manager moving forward.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Going on to item number 43, and this is under Supervisor Johnson. Discussion on possible action reference doing a medication and analysis at no cost to the county with Canna RX on what Mojave County would save if they partnered with them to protect or to provide discount prescription drugs to Mojave County employees. This was continued by the board at our last meeting, referred back to the EBT board, and we were requesting that they come back with some additional information. So is there anyone here from the EBT board?
Madam Chair, I don't know that this has gone to the EBT board yet. I think it just came back to us for information to the other board members, because we probably wouldn't all have it if it just went to the EBT board. And I don't think any action's taken. I believe Supervisor Angus, who sits on that board, will come back to us with findings.
All right. All right, then we'll go on to item number 44. It is started for executive session. Discussion of possible action reference, consideration of possible action for filling the risk management director position. Attorney Exner, do we need to run into executive session? And if so, we can move this to the end of the agenda.
Madam Chairman, a couple things. You don't have to have an executive session if you don't believe one's necessary. If you do want to have an executive session, yes, you can move it till the end of the agenda. All right.
Okay, thank you. What's the desire of the board? Do you want to go into executive session on this?
No, I just make a motion that we accept Mr. Cundiff as our new risk manager.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? Okay.
I'll second that.
Oh, okay. Apparently, I need to read the whole thing, okay? So I'm going to need to amend my motion that we hire Mr. Cundiff for employment at a range 29, step 6, which equates to $102,440 annually, with a possible start date of December 7th, 2015.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Supervisor Moss, did you want to second that amended motion?
I'll do so. I second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it looks like we have a tie vote, 2-2. I will vote no on this as well. So motion fails. Next item, next item is number,
Not agendized for that.
okay, we have the clerk of the board asking the legal questions. Attorney Ekstrom, can you advise?
The item was agendized as a very broad item to give you as much flexibility as possible in making a decision. If you have just now voted not to hire a particular individual, the notice, as I understand it, for executive session was sent to other individuals. So you can legally discuss hiring one of those people as well, if you choose to go into executive session.
Yes, Mr. Hendricks.
And Madam Chairman, I guess the options that are in front of the board at this time are, we do have another candidate who has applied, or the board can direct staff to go out, continue the search, and continue advertising for risk manager. So there's two options. If you do nothing, the staff is kind of in limbo on trying to advance this. But you can give direction for staff to move forward at this meeting. I believe that's what Bill said.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to direct staff. Supervisor Watson.
Direct staff to move forward with consideration selection of a new candidate for the Human Resources Director.
Risk manager.
I'm sorry?
You said Human Resources Director.
I'm sorry. I probably didn't enunciate it well. Let the Human Resources Director and follow through with research and re-advertising of the position.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, the last item on the agenda, under Supervisor Moss, item 45, discussion of possible action, reference ratify the flood emergency declaration signed by the chairman of the board on September 17th, 2015, and address the September 14th, 2015 flood damage, endangerment, and emergency response and recovery efforts.
Motion to approve.
Second the motion.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes unanimously. This concludes our meeting, and we are adjourned.